So, picture this. You are sitting in like a really high-stakes strategy meeting.
Oh, those are always stressful.
Right. Your CEO turns to you, the whole room just goes completely quiet, and they ask exactly how your department is leveraging artificial intelligence this quarter.
Yeah, that's the moment your heart just skips a beat if you weren't prepared.
Exactly. If your heart just skipped a beat even thinking about that scenario, you are definitely not alone. Today, we are pulling from real-world reports by IBM, Microsoft, and Google to give you the exact business English vocabulary you need to sound, well, truly authoritative in that moment.
And before we get into the data, do us a quick favor. Follow the show, leave a rating or review, and share this deep dive with a colleague or a friend who really wants to upgrade their professional English.
Yes, please do. All right, let's just get straight to the reality of the modern workplace. We are way past the era of viewing AI as some sort of science fiction concept.
We really are. The conversation has completely shifted. It's no longer, what if this replaces us in 10 years? It's now, how do I use this to finish my Friday reporting by 3 p.m.?
Right. How do I get out of the office on time?
Pretty much. And to lead those conversations, professionals need a highly specific vocabulary because vaguely talking about the algorithm just, well, doesn't cut it in a boardroom anymore.
No, it definitely doesn't.
We really have to establish a clear baseline for what the technology is actually doing on a functional level.
So let's look at how the major players actually define it. When IBM talks about AI, they don't describe it as like a magic brain.
Right.
They define it as technology that enables computers to simulate human learning, comprehension, and eponemy. And I want to look really closely at those last two concepts because using them correctly instantly elevates your professional communication.
They're critical distinctions. I mean, think about how software used to work. If you used a search function in an old database, it just looked for exact keyword matches.
Yeah, just basic retrieval.
Exactly, that's just retrieval. But when an AI demonstrates comprehension, it's actually processing the intent, the tone, and the context of the data.
So it's reading between the lines, sort of.
Yes. It understands that a customer emailing about a late delivery and another one emailing about a missing package are experiencing the same fundamental issue, even if the actual words are completely different.
That makes a lot of sense. And then there's autonomy, which is huge. In a traditional software setup, you have to guide the program through every single micro step.
It's exhausting.
It is. But autonomy means the tool can operate independently within the parameters you set. You aren't, holding its hand. You're giving it a destination, and it's figuring out the route on its own.
Which is exactly what the modern workforce is desperately searching for right now.
Because everyone is just burned out.
Totally. People are exhausted by the manual dread of their jobs. Reading 50 unread emails on a Monday morning, manually sorting spreadsheet columns, copy-pasting data from one platform to another.
The worst.
Right, so they are actively seeking tools that operate with enough autonomy to automate those routine tasks and streamline their workflows.
And I just want to pause there because the phrase streamline a workflow is such a powerful piece of business English.
It really is.
You aren't just saying, I want to work faster. You are communicating to your management team that you are removing unnecessary friction from a complex process.
Yes, it sounds incredibly strategic.
And this desire to remove friction is so intense right now that it's actually creating this massive shadow IT situation in corporate offices.
Oh, the data on this is fascinating. So Microsoft recently released their Work Trend Index, where they surveyed over 31,000 knowledge workers globally.
Okay, big sample size.
Massive. And they found that a staggering 78% of employees are using unsanctioned AI tools at work.
Wait, 78%.
Yeah.
That means if you look around your office, nearly 8 out of 10 people are using software that hasn't been officially vetted or approved by their IT department.
That is exactly what unsanctioned means in a corporate context. These employees aren't, waiting around for a company-wide rollout or some formal training program.
They don't have the patience for that.
No, they are so eager for immediate results and so desperate to automate their workflows that they are just bypassing the official channels entirely. They're bringing their own solutions to work.
That is, it's the equivalent of bringing your own high-powered power tool to a construction site because the company-provided manual screwdriver is taking too long.
That is the perfect analogy.
Right. You have a massive job to do. You have a strict deadline. You are not going to spend 4 hours twisting a little screwdriver when you literally have a power drill sitting in the trunk of your car.
It's self-optimization in real time.
Right.
But from a leadership perspective, it forces a major operational question.
Which is?
Well, if you are listening to this deep dive right now, you really have to ask yourself, how many of your own colleagues are quietly using a generative AI tool to draft a difficult client email or summarize a 50-page report just to survive the day?
Probably a lot of them. I mean, let's just ask the listener directly. Think about it. Would this work in your company? Have you ever used AI this way, just to get through your workload?
I'm guessing a lot of heads are nodding right now. Because if 78% of the workforce is doing this, we really have to look at what they're actually accomplishing across different departments.
Yeah, let's walk through a typical company and see this in action, because the vocabulary changes a bit depending on the context. If we look at human resources, for example, they aren't just reading stacks of applications anymore.
No, not at all.
They are using generative AI for parsing resumes.
And parsing is the absolute perfect word there. Instead of manually reviewing 500 PDFs just to find one specific certification, the HR system parses the documents.
Meaning it scans them.
More than just scanning,
But-
it systematically analyzes the text, extracts the relevant qualifications, and then organizes that data into a clean, searchable format in literally seconds.
That is incredible. And then over the engineering department, software developers are using tools like GitHub Copilot, but they aren't using it to, like, write an entire product from scratch.
Right, it's not replacing them.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
They're using it to generate unit tests or to analyze their existing code for potential defects.
And in marketing, they are automating the analysis of social media sentiment. But I think the most striking data we found regarding sheer time saving actually comes from customer service.
Oh, yes. The IBM Watson data.
Right. IBM reported a 30% reduction in interaction handle time for agents who are using their Watson platform to automate responses to routine queries.
A 30% reduction in handle time is a massive financial win for any operation.
Huge.
When you're presenting that kind of outcome in a strategy meeting, the ideal business English phrasing is that AI helps alleviate the burden. You're making the crushing volume of customer tickets less severe. You alleviate the bottleneck.
And by alleviating that initial burden, you achieve what leadership ultimately wants, which is driving efficiency. The Microsoft trial data backs this up too, actually.
Oh, tell me about that one.
Well, during a randomized controlled trial involving thousands of users across 60 different organizations, employees using Microsoft Copilot read 11% fewer individual emails.
Okay, wait. I want to push back on that 11% figure for a second.
Sure.
Because if I'm a CEO sitting in that meeting, 11% doesn't really sound like a revolutionary transformation. Why is Microsoft highlighting that specific kind of small number?
It does sound small at first, but you have to look at it at scale.
Okay.
If an employee receives, say, 200 emails a day, and the AI synthesizes the long threads so they don't have to individually open and read 22 of them, that saves maybe 20 minutes a day.
Right.
Now, multiply 20 minutes by 5 days a week across a company of 10,000 employees, that is an astronomical amount of recovered time. It frees up enormous mental bandwidth.
Bandwidth being your cognitive capacity.
Yeah.
Or like mental energy.
Precisely. The AI takes over the routine, repetitive tasks, the low bandwidth work, so the human professional can focus on the complex, strategic thinking that actually requires deep focus.
Well, hold on. If we apply that logic back to the customer service example, if the AI is handling all the easy questions, like password resets or tracking numbers, doesn't that fundamentally change the human agent's job?
How so?
Well, because the only calls making it past the AI to an actual human being are the absolute most complex, highly escalated, emotionally charged problems.
Doesn't that make human empathy and intuition significantly more critical than it was before?
Oh, that is the paradox of automation, and it is entirely true.
Right.
As routine tasks are automated, the nature of human work shifts heavily toward high-value emotional intelligence. Because an AI cannot negotiate a delicate contract dispute.
No, it'd be terrible at that.
It cannot de-escalate a genuinely furious client who feels betrayed by your company. The human touch becomes the premium asset.
Yeah.
So this whole narrative that AI is just a magic button that does our jobs while we kick our feet up on the desk is completely false.
Totally false.
If human intuition is more critical than ever, that means using this technology effectively requires a completely different kind of mental effort.
It does. And this is where true leadership communication comes in. If you are in that boardroom we talked about earlier, you cannot just be a cheerleader for the technology.
Right. You can't just be like, AI is amazing, let's buy it all.
Exactly. You have to demonstrate critical thinking by discussing the roadblocks and the serious mental heavy lifting required to integrate it safely.
What specific roadblocks should we be bringing up to sound credible?
You need to be comfortable discussing data privacy constraints, the friction of integrating new AI with legacy company systems, and the very real challenge of mitigating bias in algorithms.
Let's focus on mitigating bias, because that is a crucial collocation right now.
It really is everywhere.
AI systems can inadvertently perpetuate historical biases that exist in their training data. And if you don't catch it, that can lead to, well, skewed financial forecasts or completely unfair HR screening processes. Mitigation means you are implementing proactive business strategies to reduce that risk.
And mitigating that risk requires a human being actively monitoring the output. Microsoft researchers have actually coined a term for this new type of cognitive workload. They call it metacognitive demand.
Okay, metacognitive demand. That sounds incredibly academic. What does that actually look like for me sitting at my laptop on a Tuesday afternoon?
It does sound academic, but metacognition is essentially just thinking about how you think.
Oh.
In the past, if you had to write a project proposal, you just opened a blank document and started typing. You were doing the execution.
Right, just putting words on the page.
But when you use AI, you aren't typing the document. You have to clearly define the goal, break the task down into logical steps, write a precise prompt, and then evaluate the AI's output to see if it actually matches your business intent.
And it usually doesn't on the first try.
Exactly. If it doesn't, you have to iterate and tweak your prompt. That evaluation process demands a high level of metacognitive effort.
I love that concept because it perfectly captures the reality of using the software. To me, the metacognitive demand of using AI is exactly like managing an overly eager, very fast-working intern.
Oh, that's a great way to look at it.
Right. You don't have to write the first draft to the report yourself anymore. The intern hands it to you in 5 seconds. But you cannot just send that draft directly to the CEO.
No, that would be a disaster.
You have to spend serious mental energy checking the intern's work, verifying their numbers, and refining your instructions so they don't give you a totally unusable document the next time.
That analogy hits the nail on the head. You have delegated the mechanical execution, but you retain 100% of the metacognitive burden of evaluation and strategy. You are responsible for the final product.
Which just proves the modern professional isn't being replaced. We are transitioning to a state of, well, working alongside AI.
Yeah.
It's a collaborative partnership.
Absolutely.
So if you are listening right now, imagine bringing these concepts into your next team meeting. Think about it. What vocabulary would you use in that meeting to express these risks to your leadership team? How much more authoritative would you sound if, instead of just saying AI is hard to use, you explain that your department needs time to adapt to this new metacognitive demand?
It completely changes how leadership perceives your grasp of the technology. You sound like a strategist. But it also highlights the next major challenge for businesses.
Which is?
Since managing this digital intern takes a very specific, high-level skill set, how do managers actually drive their teams to adopt these tools without it feeling like an overwhelming, exhausting chore?
Because if 78% of people are already using unsanctioned tools, they clearly want the help. But how do you standardize it across a whole company safely?
For that, we look at Google's AI Skills Playbook. They published a strategic framework for upskilling a modern workforce, and their first core directive is all about placement.
Placement, meaning where the AI actually lives on your computer.
Exactly. Google explicitly states that the fastest way to drive adoption is to build AI directly into the everyday tools your teams are already using.
Driving adoption. That is a must-know leadership phrase. It means you are actively facilitating and encouraging the widespread use of a new system.
Spot on.
And Google's advice makes total sense. If you mandate that your team has to log into a separate, unfamiliar platform to use the company AI, they're going to resist it. It's friction.
Right. It's just another tab to open.
But if the AI is just a new button sitting inside the email client or the project management software, they already have open 8 hours a day.
Then adoption happens organically, becomes a reflex rather than a forced mandate. You establish an AI baseline for the whole company without disrupting their daily habits.
What other strategies does Google recommend for upskilling a team?
Alongside integrating the tools naturally, they emphasize building a framework for trust, which ties right back into our conversation about mitigating bias and protecting data and offering flexible learning paths.
I just want to notice the strong action verbs we are using here. Establish a baseline. Build a framework. Offer flexible learning.
Very powerful.
When you are writing a strategic proposal or outlining a quarterly plan, anchoring your bullet points with powerful imperative verbs like that makes your communication crystal clear and highly authoritative.
Absolutely. And as employees engage with that flexible learning, Google really stresses the importance of validating their skills. When an employee reaches a learning milestone, you need to provide formal recognition, like a digital badge or an internal certification.
Validating skills is a great HR concept. It means you're officially recognizing that an employee has leveled up their capabilities.
Yeah, it shows they aren't just wasting time.
Exactly. It proves to the employee that their effort in learning this new technology is actually recognized by the company, which is just critical for morale.
It transforms a casual learning moment into a verified career achievement. Now, speaking of leveling up capabilities, there is one specific area of AI adoption that is fundamentally reshaping international business, and it directly relates to the concept of comprehension we discussed earlier.
Oh, this is perhaps the most incredible data point we reviewed for this deep dive.
I agree. So, Microsoft conducted a study specifically looking at how their Copilot software affects communication in multilingual global teams.
Okay.
They discovered that using the AI to summarize and review meeting transcripts closed 84.6% of the accuracy gap for non-native English speakers when compared to native speakers.
Wait, we really need to pause and absorb the weight of that statistic. Nearly 85% of the comprehension gap completely closed.
It's mind-blowing.
This completely redefines what we're talking about. AI is not just a productivity tool for parsing data or generating code. In an international business setting, it is a massive global communication equalizer.
It really is. Think about the metacognitive demand on a non-native speaker in a fast-paced, highly technical strategy meeting. Oh, it's so stressful.
Right. They aren't just evaluating the business concepts. Their brain is simultaneously working overtime to translate idioms, process rapid speech, and formulate responses in a second language.
It is exhausting. But if they know they have an AI tool running alongside them, a tool demonstrating high comprehension that will accurately summarize the nuances, the action items, and the tone of the meeting, that mental burden is totally alleviated.
It functions as a safety net. It allows non-native speakers to participate, to lead discussions, and to negotiate with absolute confidence, knowing they won't miss a critical detail.
That is so freeing.
It removes the language barrier as a friction point in global operations.
Yeah.
And honestly, it directly supports exactly what the listeners of this deep dive are doing right now.
Yes.
They are mastering professional English to compete on a global stage, and these tools are available to help bridge that gap instantly.
It is incredibly empowering. So with all of this potential on the table, the automated workflows, the efficiency gains, the communication leveling, what is the dividing line?
What do you mean? How does a professional go from just casually asking an AI to write a polite email to being the person leading the charge and transforming their department?
Well, Microsoft's research actually investigated this exact question. They looked at the behavioral data to see what factors predicted someone becoming what they call an AI power user.
A power user being someone who extracts maximum value from the software rather than just scratching the surface.
Exactly. And the most significant predictor wasn't having a computer science degree. It wasn't sitting through a mandatory week-long corporate training seminar.
Okay, then what was it?
The number one predictor of becoming an AI power user was regular experimentation.
Experimentation, just getting your hands dirty and trying things out on your own.
Yes, it's the willingness to write a prompt, see that the output is terrible, and instead of giving up, you tweak the prompt, you iterate, you figure out how the machine, thinks.
Trial and error.
Exactly. That regular experimentation is the only way to master the metacognitive demand. It's how you evolve from a casual user who accepts the first draft into a power user who actively guides the AI to produce high-level strategic work.
It all connects back to those core concepts. By actively experimenting, you learn how to better streamline your workflows, you understand how to mitigate the risks, and you naturally position yourself as the authority in your office.
You become the person who isn't just surviving the transition, but actually architecting how your company works alongside AI moving forward.
So, as we wrap up today's deep dive, we really want to leave you with a final provocative thought to mull over.
Definitely.
The data is clear. This technology is rapidly becoming the standard across every single industry. The manual tasks are disappearing. So, are you going to proactively become the AI power user who guides your organization's future? Or are you going to wait around for someone else to establish the baseline and dictate your new workflow to you?
The opportunity to lead is right in front of you, and the vocabulary to have those high-level conversations is now firmly in your toolkit.
Let's do a really quick recap of the communication strategies and collocations we unpacked today. We started by defining AI not as magic, but as technology simulating comprehension and autonomy.
Right. And we explored how employees are using unsanctioned tools to automate tasks and streamline workflows.
We looked at the impact of parsing data to alleviate the routine burden and free up mental bandwidth.
Crucially, we discussed the leadership skills required. Mitigating bias, managing the heavy metacognitive demand, and driving adoption through validation and regular experimentation.
And finally, striving to become that power user. We really want to challenge you to be bold this week. Take this new vocabulary and consciously drop these collocations into your very next email, presentation, or strategy meeting.
Just see how it changes the dynamic of the conversation.
Exactly. And to make applying these words as easy as possible, don't forget to grab your free Vocabulary Companion PDF. The link is right down there in the description.
It's an excellent resource for reviewing the spelling and context of everything we covered today.
Also, if you found this deep dive valuable, be sure to follow the show and head over to YouTube to subscribe to The English Effect. Like and share the lesson with your professional network.
It really helps us out.
Thank you so much for joining us for this conversation. We invite you to return for our next business English lesson as you continue building the confidence to communicate professionally.
And remember, you don't need to do the heavy lifting alone anymore. You're just managing the intern.
Exactly right. See you next time.